Hello and welcome to Mike's FJR's Corner. Today I want to talk about the coil and plug conversion for the Yamaha FJR1300 and why I do not suggest them. There's a forum that suggests that you could use two of these R1 sticks in series in order to match the specifications for the original OEM coil. Back when I first got my bike, I was having problems with vibration in the engine. As you know, I've done a lot of work to this bike to try to eliminate the vibration. One of the first things that I did is I figured coils and wires are old, so to replace them, and of course they're very expensive from Yamaha. So I saw this on the forum and thought, well, let me try it. I had swapped them out, made the harness for it, and put them in, and I did not notice any difference between using the Coil On Plug and using the original coils. So subsequently, I wound up going through other systems of the bike, and some of the things that I did remove some vibration. But when I finished the last videos that I did on the bike, I eliminated all but a little bit of vibration. So one day I was going down the road and I was feeling a little bit of vibration in the engine, and I was kind of thinking about it, and it dawned on me that the coil and plugs had 3 connections. The original OEM has a total of 4 connections. That's where the problem lies. If you put 2 of these in series, it makes 2 ohm. The primary on the original OEM coil is also 2 ohm. So you have a connection between the 2 sides of the primary. On the other end of the coil, you have the secondary windings, which is connected between the 2 outputs. So you have the pulse generated by the primary, and the secondary outputs generate a high voltage which drain through the plugs to engine ground. The problem with the coil and plug is you have one plug that's comes from the module to one end of to the primary. The second side of the primary is going down to the input of the second coil and plug, and then the final connection goes down to the positive 12 volts. That's fine in theory. They should be equal because the primary coils both equal 2 ohm, and the secondary resistance is fairly close to each other. However, if you measure the original OEM, you have hold on, I'm missing the connections here. There we go. You have very little resistance across the primary. When you go across to secondary, bear with me here. You have 15 ohm. Okay. If I measure across to any of the primaries or the case, I get no resistance. Okay, so the coil is completely isolated from the primary. On a coil on plug, if you measure, you have 1 ohm resistance across the primary. I take the cap off here and I measure the secondary. Where am I going to measure the other secondary? So if I measure the primary, I wind up with a resistance. So let me see if I can get it to stay here. Come on. I wind up with a resistance. Hence the problem. If you have one coil and the second coil in series, the secondary is connected to the positive side of the coil and plug, which in turn is connected to the negative side of the second coil and plug. This creates a problem. I have a diagram here that might help explain what I'm talking about. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, if it's in focus. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. What you have here is we have the OEM coil, and this is the module. And this is a switch in the module. So you have your voltage coming through the primary of the coil and comes across and the switch, electronic switch within the module to ground. So your current path is, it's always from minus to positive, so your current flow comes up through the coil to positive, and that's your current flow in a circular motion there. The secondary, the pulse comes through from the primary to the secondary when the switch closes, and that causes high voltage coming out both sides to each plug and to engine ground. So our current flow is circular this way. Actually, it's the other way, it's from negative to positive. Okay, to the coil on plug conversion. Here we got the same thing. We have the module with the switch, but we have two coils now. The 12 volts goes through the primary of one of the coils on plugs and then goes through the secondary of the coil on plugs, each equaling 1 ohm, so the total resistance is 2, and flows through the switch to ground. So our current flow is ground through the switch up through the coils to 12 volts, and it's the same circular pattern of current flow. On the secondary side, you notice the bottom side of the coil is attached to the positive side of the primary. The same thing on the secondary coil, it's attached to the positive side of the primary. This lower coil here is fine because it's attached to the 12 volts, so your current flow is through the plug, or from the plug through and down to 12 volts in this direction. The problem is on this coil up here is this coil winds up flowing through the primary of the first coil. So when these two fire, a pulse comes through, it generates a pulse, but this has a resistance in this direction, so your voltage is going to be less, as well as this spark, this high voltage, is also going to feed through this coil, interfering with the signal on this coil. At the same time, a small high voltage peak can come back into the module, given the possibility that you could blow the module. So because of the fact that the secondary coil winds up going through the primary of the other coil on plug, this is the reason why I do not suggest it, as well as the possibility of blowing the module. I had not thought of this when I did the conversion, and I just happened to think of it one day. And I drew it out in paper and realized we can't do this. Well, that's about it for today's video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up or press the subscribe button. And thank you for supporting the channel, and goodbye.